Welcome to Critical Aspects of Law Enforcement, a podcast where we dive into the physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being of the law enforcement officer.
Minor injury accident to the 2700 block of 156th Avenue Northeast.
All right, welcome back to Critical Aspects of Law Enforcement. I'm your host, Vernon Phillips, and today on the show, we've got Jeff Gold. So what I'd like to do, I'd like to turn it over to him and just give a little background of who he is and his years in the law enforcement first responder community, plus a little bit of background about himself. So, sir, I appreciate you coming on.
I appreciate you, Vernon. So this is my 41st year in public safety, so it kind of makes me realize how old I am. But so I've been in Marion County my entire life. I'm born and raised here. Started off with the fire department in the early 80s, went through police recruit school as a shift swap, ended up getting selected to do arson investigations, went through the FTO program as a firefighter, which was kind of unique. I reserved out in Dunellen, got a little bit of time on there. One day the sheriff's office called me up and asked me if I wanted a job, and I took it, and it was the greatest career you could ever have. So I did that until 2014, and one of the things I always say is I used to hear everybody talking about retiring all the time and how they couldn't wait to, and I used to tell people, the day I retire, I'm going to come back and do it for free, and I sure did. So I came back, did that till 2016 when I got elected into as a county commissioner and couldn't do both. And then as soon as I finished up with that, I went full time with Indian River Shores Public Safety, and then back to part time, and that's where I'm at now. So I still work fire department. That's where that is.
Yeah. So there's a whole lot there. So obviously 41 years is that's an impressive span of time there to be working in public safety. And so there's a lot of information that we can glean from you and get from you. So you are also a lifelong learner. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your education journey too?
So one of my things that changed me in learning was actually going to paramedic school a long time ago. I started seeing what the classes I had there and some opportunities. College brought their bachelor's degree to Ocala briefly, I think for like 2 semesters, and I had to drive down there. So I did my bachelor's degree at University of Central Florida, came up here to the sheriff's office, and I did my master's degree, and then went on from there and did the ABD route on a PhD, which means that I all but my dissertation, and that kind of stuck with me for years. I mean, I spent 7 years working on it and didn't get my dissertation through, and went back and finally got my doctorate. And since then, I've done another master's degree in emergency management, fire science at University of Florida. Currently, doing the legal studies, law school. I'm also I'm a glutton. It's like if it's something to be addicted to, I guess it's a good thing, because schooling is. I'm also doing another graduate degree in IT, and I'm always doing something. But that's kind of my thing that I like to do. And I don't, throw that out as, I know I very rarely even put it out there what I have, but it's something that I like. I enjoy it, and learning is just everything. I've taken every class. I think that all kind of relate into my career.
Yeah. No, and I think anybody who's gone into a doctoral program, a PhD program, the coursework leading up to the dissertation part, that's always that's very manageable. But when you start to get into the dissertation work, that's where things really start to get heavy and deep. And by the time you're done with it, you're like, man, that's it. I'm done. Like, I'm not doing anything else. But then, you end up finding yourself plugged back into something else.
Well, the oddest thing is I started the other master's degree, the graduate degree, while I was doing my doctoral dissertation. I remember when the opportunity came up, University of Florida, with that, because I knew I was kind of navigating back to the fire service again, and I really wanted to do that. And also I teach, so that's my biggest thing. I forget about that. Went back and did it, and it was kind of a challenge. Somebody said, counselor up there said, you can't do both. And then came back and said, there's no way you can finish a graduate degree, 11 classes in a year. And I said, watch me. And I did. And it was good. It worked out good.
Yeah. And I can relate a little bit on the dissertation part, because, when I went back and got my traumatology degree, my EDS in traumatology. So that's a doctoral program, but it's everything but the dissertation, right?
Yeah.
So here I sit and I'm like, well, I've got this traumatology degree, and like, yes, it's a doctoral degree, but I don't get the doctor title because I didn't do the dissertation. I already did that, with my pastoral counseling, doctorate. So I'm kind of like, do I need to go back and really do that? But much
No.
like you, I mean, yeah,
Yeah, you
no,
do. You do. Yeah. Yeah. No, I understand.
but much like you, I mean, it always kind of sits there in the back of your mind, like, okay, I could, it's 30 more credits, but then it's like, oh man, that's going to be another 2 years, or whatever it is. Hopefully my wife's not listening, because I told her after this last one, I said, I'm done. I think I've academically burned out. And then obviously, this, here I am back sitting in CF. So apparently it's not working out very well for me. So, but
Yeah.
no, there's a lot there. And like I said, there's so much we could probably get into, and for sake of time, as you look back over your career and just kind of where you're at now, I mean, obviously you've got your hands still involved in a lot of things. You do a lot of teaching, you do a lot of instructing. You're still in the fire service. You're still providing that hands-on. So how do you maintain just your overall balance in life? Your physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. How do you kind of keep all that in check, and just to keep yourself from burning out? Because somebody who's, a high drive individual, much like yourself, you've got to find that baseline to where, you can keep pushing forward like you are, but without at the cost of your own self.
And I think because I am, it kind of keeps me mentally tuned with all the education, doing all the different things. Because I've always found that when I get bored or I don't have something going, you get that feeling of, for me, it's an antsy feeling. I get an antsy feeling, or sometimes you get a depressed feeling, like, what do I need to do this? I should have gone back and finished that. But I think it's something that I've done so long, and you learn that in public safety. A lot of times you have to work multiple jobs. Thankfully, I've seen, mostly as a commissioner, when I became a commissioner, I started seeing the changes in the salaries. It's not an impossible thing now to raise a family and be a first responder with the opportunity for the overtime and all. And that's a big thing, because I think I got so used to it because, you know, starting off making, $16,000 a year, which was not bad at the time, but, really not making a big salary was really hard. So I was, you know, I've always kind of stayed busy. And I think that's kind of kept me focused, but, it does take some tolls. And I've noticed that it's taken some tolls family wise. And uh, one of the things that I sat and thought about it was, I did all these things to plan for the future. I planned for this day, which I think it's going to come someday where I'm finally going to retire to a point. But, I plan for that day when I can't get up and move and I'm going to teach from home. So I've always added things there. But my part is, I've had to start saying no. Like, you're out here doing the crossover, I'm teaching academy classes. I said, let me teach a day every once in a while just to keep in to see the recruits. And then all at once I've got every, coordinator coming over, like, I have this schedule here. Can you do this day and that day? Yeah, I haven't said no, but it's getting a little difficult. But kind of a long answer,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. No,
I'm still.
I think you're covering most of the classes that I'm sitting in.
Yeah, and it's because you're in the 1 to 10, and so I was able to juggle some work times around. But, there again, it was, I'm juggling a full-time job too, which has demands. But I can say, and this will probably be the first time that I'm really getting out there, I have, put in for retirement finally on full-time jobs, and I'm finishing out. I think I'll have a paycheck or two coming up, and I'm pretty well done. I'm done with the full-time stuff. That's what I say now.
That's
Till
what you say
somebody else.
now. But
Mhm.
hey, you never know. Something might just offer itself up, and you might just be like, hey, okay. So,
Planning out ahead, so I
yeah.
don't break plans. So
Yeah.
we planned a lot of cruises throughout the end of the year and some different trips. So kind of purposely to do it, which I've done in one other thing too. Might not be this podcast, but we'll talk about one day.
Yeah.
That's how I keep from doing things.
Yeah. So as we kind of, progress forward, I mean, obviously you've got a long, career history, and we oftentimes, kind of look back and say, okay, how did we progress through things? How did we get on the other side of things? And a lot of that comes back to calls for service. I mean, obviously, you've worked numerous calls of service, and I'm sure you could go through numerous stories of ones that were awkward, ones that were funny, ones that were difficult. But kind of generally, what we like to do here is, if you're willing to share one of the more difficult calls for service, and then kind of how you got on the other side of that, because then that kind of promotes that just that ability for other people to say and express the same thing, right? Because that's kind of where we're at in law enforcement is people, they have a difficult time with a call, but they don't feel like they can voice that. So
Hmm.
the more we can talk about those things, I think the more we can prompt others to say, yeah, you know what? I had a crappy call too, and maybe I can get on the other side of it.
And I think that is a big thing, being able to talk about it. And obviously, me starting so long ago, I started in the generation where in public safety, you didn't talk about it. You didn't talk about the bad calls. But I can remember back and actually, try to limit it down. There are a few. One of the things, the calls overall that always have bothered me is when people pass away alone. I mean, I guess you look at now, I can start to analyze it, but early in my career, I had on a baseline road, I had a gentleman who was pulling his three daughters across baseline, and he had them on the lawnmower with the little trailers you had pull behind. And somebody struck him. It was myself and my partner were on the ambulance. We got there. She took the one patient into the ambulance, and I only thought there was two. I'm working on both of them were cardiac. They were trauma codes. They were we were doing CPR and all this. And the father came up with the third child and was just handing it to me, trying to get me to do something, which, that gives you a feeling of helplessness. And all three passed away, and I never followed up on it. And I always kind of wonder, what happened with the father, what, happened with that. But that bothered me. And at the time, we didn't have the resources. Usually the resources then were you go out to the bar and you talk to other people about it. And it still is, unfortunately, today. And then that one there, now I kind of see the pattern. It kind of involves children. The second one was sheriff's office one, where it was, midnight. I love midnight, so it was great. Out there it was cold. It reminded me of it today. I would sit on South Pine and turn off the car, which most law enforcement don't do, but you hear so much with the windows down. And I heard a car crash. It was right around the corner. As soon as I pulled around, I could see it. And I looked at, I think it was something that kicked off. It was just now, I just actually realized it. The car rolled over, caught on fire, had three adults or, people over 18, like 19, 20-year-old children, me, um, were in there. Uh, one was unconscious and the other two were conscious. They were, I wasn't able to get them out. I mean, and it's it's still a kind of a hard thing to think about, but, I'm trying to pull somebody out using fire extinguishers I had in my car, doing that. But I'm holding somebody's hand while they burn to death, and that was a pretty hard thing. I walked away from it and noticed, my jacket was like crusty, burnt, my pants, everything like that. I did have offer from the department, but it didn't really kick in to me because one of the other deputies showed up, and I thought it was kind of at the time odd, but she had a lot of more problems. She had a lot of problems with it because she had thought that was her daughter was in the car. Same timing. I remember getting mad about it, which now that you look back at, PTSD and all these things, anger and stuff comes out. I didn't recognize it. I had a detail. I had a Lockheed detail coming up that afternoon. I didn't want to miss that. I needed the money. And they were like, oh, we have a critical stress debriefing. I just got off work. It was kind of the way it was set up. And I was angry that I was told I had to go to it. And I was very uncooperative. I'm like, I'm fine. Y'all leave me alone. And it kind of put a bad thing on there. You know, those are about the worst calls that I think I've been on. I've been on a lot of them, things that might have bothered me a little bit more, but I think it was the first one, the feeling of helplessness, and then the second one, same thing, three kids feeling of helplessness. But then the fourth into the debriefing part, I think was worse than anything that I had to deal with. It kind of put a
Mm.
bad part to me, which I think
Yeah.
You know, it just put up where later on people would say PTSD or they have that. You know, hey, it put me in a bad light to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and we can talk about at a later time or another episode. We could talk
Yeah,
about the
sorry.
critical no the critical incident stress debriefings, and I've got my own thoughts on those, I'm sure, as well as you do. But so what is something that as you kind of you look back over those ones that you shared, like what is it that helped you kind of progress beyond that? I mean, to kind of get past that, and maybe it wasn't a great coping strategy that helped you do that. If that was the case, how would you change that now?
I think it would be a later call, which I did have a few people call me later, but you know, we need to decompress after something like that. Mostly somebody working midnights. They have to decompress, they have to come back to it. What helped me the most on was finding out that the other deputy I think had the issues and what they were. And I think that made me because I reached out to her, didn't I knew her from shift, I reached out to her the next shift we work and said everything good and she talked about it and everything. It helped me to listen to somebody else, if that makes sense. But to do anything else, I guess just I think an individual one-on-one is a better part. And I've also had that with a couple shooting incidents where I've had one of my FTOs would reach out and say, "Hey, are you okay? This doesn't happen. you know this is rare." So yeah,
Yeah, and that's kind of the model that we've kind of adapted moving forward. With peer support and things that we're doing now, is it's just especially with with law enforcement, you just find that you get better results when there's more of that one-on-one peer-to-peer exchange, versus hey, let's everybody get in a circle and kind of talk this out.
yeah,
Now I know there's advantages and disadvantages to both, but like I said, we can talk about that in a
yeah,
later episode. But so to kind of transition out of that, so I mean, obviously, yeah, talking to somebody, kind of defusing that and kind of breaking that down definitely helps to being able to talk about it. But when you look back, obviously you've got lots of call for service, but what is one of the funniest or maybe the most awkward ones, calls for service, that you had?
the funniest one that I tell, and it's actually kind of a traumatic one if you think about it, was well, I was a drug unit supervisor for a while. It was like my favorite job. We I covered on Christmas Eve. The guys who were on call, they were like, they had a Christmas Eve call. It was a person that was uh, doctor shopping. And it was a person that worked at a doctor's office was calling in take prescriptions. She was supposed to pick them up in the afternoon, never showed up. Well, the agents that were there, they had their kids and everything. I said, I'll go ahead and sit there. It was near my house. So I sat there, didn't think 10 minutes before the Walgreens, I think it was Walgreens on 36th and Mary Camp, before they closed, they called me and said, "Hey, she just called. She's on her way." I knew the lady at the time. I could say she was old, but she's my age, almost 60 now. So, but she went through the drive-through. My officer safety was terrible because I was expecting, hey, this is a nice lady. I know her looked at her background. She works in a doctor's office. She's a grandma. Went up to the car, stopped her, walked up in regular clothes, tapped on the window, called her by her name, first name, and was like, "Hey, sheriff's office, just let we know you're getting the prescriptions." Next thing I see is a gun pointed at me. It shocked me more than your normal reaction. So I stepped back. I drew my gun. I looked in and kind of looked back because I'd left my portable in the truck, and looked back real briefly and left my door open. I had my canine with me at the time, which I didn't have secured. I look back and their hands are up. I'm like, that's that brief second where we had to make that decision. I'm like, did she really have a gun or did I see
Yeah,
that correctly? I ran back to my truck, called it in. I said, I think the subject signal zero, I think that subject has a gun, which the kind of response you get on that.
yeah,
So mostly right in the city. And I go back up there and then she's locked, put her window up. She won't come out of the car. She still got her hands up. I break the window to the car. I reach in with the adrenaline. She probably weighs 80 pounds. I grab her. She flies out of the car. My dog, which, he's been patrol trained, he's a drug trained, he comes out. I didn't mean for him to come out, but he went through seeing that. He runs up immediately grabs her by the head. And, this isn't like a funny story. You're looking for a funny story, but she grabs her by the head. I'm calling him off, and she had a wig on. So he grabs the wig and takes off with the wig. And I don't even know where he went. So I'm sitting there. I get her handcuffed. Everybody gets to me. I said, yeah, she had a gun. They're looking, Jeff, we can't find a gun. And I'm like, oh my gosh, think this or whatever. There's OPD sergeant found it come back. It was a 38 that she had had. It had actually just didn't set the primer off. It misfired. Um, I remember looking down the barrel. She later said that she tried to kill herself and everything. But where it gets to the funny part was because, I always have that kind of weird sense of humor. I'm sitting there. All this has gone bad before we'd even found the gun. And this guy walks up and he goes, hey, did you have a police dog with a badge on its collar? And I was like, yeah. I figured 464 and 36th Avenue. He's been hit by a car or something like that. He goes, well, I got a dog in the front seat of my car with an animal in its mouth, and I can't get it. So I walk over to what was the Shell station. It might still be. I look in there, and he's sitting in the front seat. The guy had left his window down. He's sitting in the front seat with this lady's red wig in there and growling, and I'm trying to get him help me carry him back and everything. And it's like, that's great. I just took this nice little old lady out, threw her to the ground. At least hopefully it was the right person. She got scalped by my dog. Everything went bad, and we can't find the gun. So, but in the end, it came out good. I was fine. She ended up, getting the help that she needed, which I was fine with later. And that's one of the things I've never taken cases personal. Whatever was going through her mind was traumatic enough to either hurt somebody else or to hurt herself. And, I left in my mind that she was trying to hurt herself. And then not really a good, happy, funny story, but it's
I mean,
different.
it is entertaining. I mean, you can look
Yeah,
back at it now if you can find it entertaining.
yeah, I do.
I mean, so I'm just trying to picture all this go down, and seeing your canine sitting in some random person's front seat, and they get, I got a sheriff's canine in my car, and it's killed somebody's cat or something.
And growling, just
Yeah,
and looking forward, growling. So when I pull up, he's just growling. Wouldn't even look at me. Open the door, I go to grab him by his collar. He didn't leave. He'll growl. Like, oh my gosh, I was like wanting to snatch him, but everybody's looking at me. So I actually ended up picking him up and carrying him and getting him back for a little way. So it was just like everything was bad, but in the end, it worked out.
yeah.
So
Now, if this would have been, in the last several years, that would have been all over social media,
because it
YouTube.
would have been video.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, it would have been video all over. So,
thank
as you look
goodness.
back over your career, what are three of the most significant things that you've learned, throughout your career?
That's actually, I guess one of the things I've always learned was that just how fragile life is when you go and you just a traffic accident or, Brian Litz when he got killed, it was very talking to him the night before and then the next day he's dead. Just in general, life is just fragile that you got to do things that you want to do. Like what you said, you still have that urge in the back of your mind to finish something. I always finish stuff. I finish stuff or go back and try. I try my best. I've failed at a lot of things. And, you go back. Next is on a different subject. Our people, I guess our culture is so used to seeing things on television that they think they don't have a really good grasp of what law enforcement is. And then finally, people are really untruthful at times. And it's sad because, it's just you look at, but mainly people don't understand what we do in criminal justice. They see TV and, it's an entertaining show, but people love Chicago PD. And it's like one of my least favorite ones because, they show where the officers are beating people and doing things to get confessions. And I've actually had recruits come out and tell me at the college that that's what they want to be and that's how they want to do things. And it's kind of sad.
So, on that note, I mean, going into kind of our next question is, obviously we know that law enforcement is public safety, first responder, whatever you get into, whether it's, fire, whether it's paramedic, whether it's law enforcement, we know that's a demanding job, right? And it takes a
Mhm.
toll on the individual. And obviously you do a lot of instructing at the college. So you have a heart to invest into those coming in. So do you feel that we are doing a good job or we are, you know, that we're doing the best we can to prepare those who are coming into the career, those that are in the academies, in the recruit schools.
And that's what I love teaching the academies, because I think that's where we get the biggest touch on people, where we get to make the biggest difference, and hopefully we do. I think we're doing good as the instructors. They're so worried about just passing the test right now. You know it, you see it too, going back and looking. You're so worried about that test, because no matter what I can get up and tell you, at the end of that period, you have to pass that test or you don't
Yeah.
go on. There's some everything's test based, and I guess that's the world is like that. But we're doing a good job. I talked to the class yesterday about the difference in hours. When I went, it was 300 and some hours. Now it's 770. I think we're doing the best that we can to do it. I know, you know, Beach College of Central Florida. I think they've got an excellent academy that have had one, and they're doing a really good job. I mean, we get people from all over there, so I think we're doing the best.
Yeah. No, that's good. I mean, and along that, I mean, obviously you interact with a lot of recruits, and then you also interact with just, a lot of, you know, individuals who are in the first responder community. But, what is your advice to those just starting out, right? Those who are just entering into, not in the academy anymore, not in any of the recruit schools. They finished that. Now they're out on their own. What is your advice to those individuals?
Do things on your own, get your education on your own. Don't expect the department to do it for you. One of the biggest things that I saw, even, when I was there, and I still do, people go, well, I want to do everything you did. Talking about me, because I was lucky enough, to bomb squad, had K9, drug unit, was on SWAT, did all the kind of things that you're able to do, but it took a lot of work. I teach all the time. And the majority of things that I did early in my career were my own time, money. And I don't think our group or our culture or whatever you want to refer to it now has that. It's what you can give to me. And you really got to put out and start doing that. You got to put out for yourself to do it. And it's just something that I think people really got to realize. You really got to work for what you get. And you know that because, you're in a good position right now. And I didn't really realize until we talked that, how long you've been at the sheriff's office. You've been there a long time, more than most of the people there. And, you're getting some advantages now for what you're doing to help people and everything, but it's been a hard road. You've got to take a lot, do a lot of things. Um, I don't think anybody probably paid for your doctorate. You paid it by working overtime. That's how we all do it, or loans or whatever it is. But, you've got to go through and just work at it. And there's so many. Even now, when I see the ones, they'll ask recruiters, will you pay for this? Will you pay for that? And you got to do things on
Yeah, I mean, I think that, and I think that's a great point because you have to be willing to invest in yourself, right? I mean, you're
it. Hmm.
always continuing to be better, to do better, to just further push yourself or advance yourself. Like you said, I mean, yeah, my education, I'm paying for all my education myself. Obviously, there's things that you can put in for, and you can go to different classes and different training and things like that, and that can go through the agency or wherever you work for. If you're looking to go beyond and invest in yourself, right? Then that's going to be on you.
Hmm.
I mean, I saw the need and I had the desire to continue my education. So I just kept pushing forward, pushing that door, going to the next step, because that was important to me. And it's because that directly relates back to what I'm doing and then how I can invest back into individuals. I'm investing in myself so that I can adequately invest into other people.
Hmm.
But, if you're not willing to do that, or if you're just looking for, somebody to come and do that for you,
Yeah.
you
It,
know,
there's no self satisfaction either besides helping people. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, this. I mean, getting your education. I mean, is for one, is not for everybody, right? There are individuals who are happy to hate. Like, I went through the academy. I went through the basic recruit, or I've got into you know, I'm a line level deputy, or I'm a firefighter, whatever it is, and they're happy doing that, right? And that's the extent of
Hmm.
the schooling they want to do, and that's great. And if that's you, then but there's other things you can do to invest in yourself, right? There's other trainings and specialty courses that you can take to hone in on those skills. wherever you're at in your career. But if you're somebody who likes to challenge yourself and enjoys that, I actually don't want to say enjoys that academic aspect, because sometimes you don't. Sometimes you get done and you're like, I'm going to burn that book. Like, I don't want anything to do with that one,
I just
right?
did that the other night. Yeah.
Yeah, a good old book burning
Uh,
probably gets censored for that. But investing in yourself, like you said, I mean, it costs you money, right? There are grants out there and financial aid and things like that you can take advantage of. At some point, it's going to cost you financially yourself. You've experienced that. I've experienced that. But I didn't I didn't do it to get anything back. I did it because I wanted to further myself, and I think that's what's the important thing. That's what anybody can and anybody should take from any of this conversation is like, look, you have to work hard to get yourself opportunities that you want. So the more you invest in yourself and the more that you show that, the more likelihood that's going to happen.
and trust me, you'll find somewhere in your life where it will work. Somewhere you'll be able to reach back to that. And I always tell people, if I take a class, even if it's not a great class that I took, at least I learned even something about how I wouldn't do a class. And, I wouldn't do this, something that I wouldn't do. So yeah, it's you always pick up something, and it keeps your mind going.
Yeah, and it's funny because when we talk about this, when my wife and I talk about just education and academics and things like that, when we first got married, I had only had my associates at the time. Like that was it. Like that was kind of my
Hmm.
parents' big push. Like, hey, look, at least do your associates, at least finish that. So I think I got my associates in criminal justice administration or something like that. And I mean that was back in early 2000s. Like I don't remember, like 2006 or something like that, right? And that was it. And I had no desire to go any farther than that. Right. So when we got married, like that was it. So she's the one that went to college, and she had a bachelor's, and so she was the one that was the educated one at the time,
Hmm.
and I had no desire. And then as things kind of progressed on, and I started to get older, then I started to have that desire, like, hey, maybe I should go, and it's like, all right, let me just finish my bachelor's, right.
Yeah.
And then that turned into, jumping into my master's. And then, it's funny because we'll talk, but she's like, you had no interest in education at all. And she's like, and I was the one that had the degree. And now here you are, you just completed like a second doctoral degree. She's like, she's like, who are you? Right. And that's funny because I look back and 10 years ago, 15 years ago, I
Hmm.
would have been like, no, like I would have not anticipated myself jumping into something like that. But as you get older, as you progress through your career, things change, right? Your desires change, your motivation changes, the need to continue to challenge yourself changes, so you want to invest back into yourself. So I think that's a huge important thing, is to always continue to invest in yourself and work hard to achieve the things you want.
Yes. And hopefully everybody else starts to realize that a little bit younger than we did. So that'd be good.
Don't let my salt and pepper fool you.
I'm waiting for mine to turn. Everybody, it's gonna turn.
It's funny. I had a meeting with somebody the other day, and they said, you struck me as being older than you are just because of the salt and pepper hair. And I was like, I'll take that as a compliment. I'm choosing to take that
Hmm.
as a compliment, right?
Yeah.
But as we kind of progress on, and we talked about recruits, we talked about the academy, we talked about those just getting into the profession. Now, when we look at the individuals who are into this, the 15, 20, 25 plus years, and those who are embedded and probably starting to get into that, that staunch mindset, right? Maybe they're starting to get a little salty.
Comfort zone.
Yep. What is your advice to them?
Well, the biggest thing is everybody looks forward to retirement, and retirement's not easy. I haven't completely done it. I don't know when I'll do it, and I mean financially and just to themselves, it's kind of hard because you're going to go, 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 and then all at once it's going to be kind of a stop. You're going to lose your identity. I see that a lot with law enforcement officers. They lose their identity. They're not really sure what they want to do, or some of them just go away. They're just like, I'm done with this. But I think for if we're looking like at the 10-year officer or something like that, it's about midway in their career where that kind of starts. If we're very lucky with the Florida retirement system, you can go do something somewhere else. If you really hate your job, you got 15, 20 years left. go look somewhere else and rejuvenate yourself. Do something that feels better. For those that, I understand that at 20 years, you've got 5 years left. You don't want to go back and start as a new patrol officer or a new CO or anything like that. But start to plan for your future. Um, find the best parts of the job that you can. There's no reason that you can't. I loved my job. I did, but I also was wanting to retire. Um, I knew, it was that time to retire and, look forward to the future and do the things that you want to do. As I said, there's no time to stop learning. Find a hobby, find something doing that. But, just being miserable is a terrible thing. Misery is just being negative, being, I hate this place, I can't wait to retire. Find something that makes you happy, you know, but definitely plan for the future because, it seems to be more expensive. Mostly children are more expensive after 18 than they are earlier. But it's, it's something I hate seeing people are that negative, and that's why I always used to do it. And then what's funny is the ones that are the most negative are always the ones that end up coming back after a few years. So that's kind of strange.
Yeah, that is kind of fun. That's kind of funny. So as you kind of look at the law enforcement profession, just first responder, public safety in general, what is a challenge that you think that they're going to be facing here in the next several years?
Well, on the law enforcement side, it's just kind of the general negativity towards law enforcement. I think that's coming back up. We've been very lucky in our area that we're a pretty pro law enforcement type community compared to other parts of the country. Florida is pretty pro law enforcement, but I think there's going to be more challenges to the laws that we're seeing. A lot of the misconceptions still of what we do. I do see the hiring coming back. It's starting to get better where we're able to start recruiting and able to start hiring people. But in general, I think, we look at the salaries are different. I've always told Sheriff Woods, hey, I support you as long as you support the deputies and get the raise, get the money to them. And it's been a tremendous thing to where there's hardly any. I mean, I originally ran for county commissioner just because I used to hear all the time the county commission won't give us a raise. And then once I became a commissioner, I found out it's the sheriff who sets the amount and just has to get that budget from the commission. But, I think it looks good. The future of law enforcement mostly looks good because I think that they're starting to get paid what they need, and I think that with the keep it equal there with the corrections and with the law enforcement, with the officers out there, I think it's good. I think they're starting to get finally seeing what the value and the risk they put because it's not just that physical risk of you could go out and get shot any day. You could get in a car wreck and get killed, any of these type of things. But it's also that mental part of just constantly worried about stuff or worried about a complaint or even being in that factor all the time. But I think it's looking forward, looking a little bit up. I'll be a better question maybe a couple years to when we see how our change came back. COVID was hard. It was right after the George Floyd incident where everything was negative. When you can't have Paw Patrol on, come on.
Yeah,
We couldn't
yeah,
even put that. They
yeah.
took cops off TV and everything like that, but people still want to do it. People want to do the job. So can't really give you an answer, but I think it's going to get better.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's like you said, we're pretty fortunate with where we're at in Marion County, and and the people here. They're very much pro law enforcement, and they seem to back law enforcement. So, I mean, obviously, there's other places in the country that that's a whole other conversation, and that would be a very difficult place to work and try to start a career or even be finishing a career. So that's difficult for those individuals. As we kind of wrap up, there's a lot of things we covered, but we know that this job is very demanding, right? And it just comes with a lot of pressure, and a lot of people get to a point where they just feel like there's no right. Like, hey,
Hmm.
because of the stuff I've seen, I've heard, and just been a part of, like, I don't have anybody to talk to, and maybe they're at a point where they're just like, you know what, I'm done. I'm done with law enforcement, or maybe they're even done altogether and they're even contemplating taking their life. what is something that you would encourage them from your years of service and having 41 years in public safety? What is an encouragement that you would offer though?
There is a life after being a first responder, but the biggest thing is you look at it as, firemen, it's a little bit more evident, but in law enforcement, anything, we're helping somebody. You're going to touch somebody's life. You're going to touch them, the majority of times you have the most ability to go out and help somebody of any job there is, because you can feel good about yourself and donate thousands of dollars to your favorite charities and stuff like that, and you can go volunteer at Christmas and hand out dinners and do all the things that make you feel good. But you have such an opportunity in law enforcement to reach out and just find something and to help somebody when nobody's looking, to where you feel good about, where you're not actually doing it. And that's something that, that's your satisfaction out of it. If you're at a point where you don't care about others and stuff like that, that is an issue. There are people, the peer support groups are great. I've seen that, so I said, there'll be a discussion later where, it's not the round table of circles of people you don't know that are, please tell me your feelings and why do you feel bad about that? And this isn't normal for you to be, to be
Yeah,
in here. But it's the person that can reach out and say, hey, are you all right? Yeah, yeah, I'm good. Okay, good. That can reach out to you may only have one or two friends or even one or two acquaintances, and they'll be like, hey, check on them, make sure you're good. Hey, you all right? A text message or something. But the biggest thing just to keep up for the future is there's so much after. There's so much that you can do afterward. You can help so many people. And that's a great thing. Even if you don't think about it, you have to go back and go, hey, I remember buying these kids Christmas gifts. I remember, paying for this at one time. I remember, not taking this person to jail. Sounds weird, but, you gave a little bit of discretion. Or I remember taking this person to jail to probably save some lives. It's good. That's the way your outlook is. The way it is.
yep. Well, we're just a bit out of time, but I appreciate, you taking the time to jump on here and just share some of your experiences and share just your history in law enforcement and just public safety and just give some tips and some pointers. So I appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
So, and I think we'll probably have some conversations in the future.
Yes, sir. Well, I appreciate it very much, and thank you.
Thank you. We'll see you. I appreciate you tuning in and listening to Critical Aspects of Law Enforcement. Remember to subscribe to the podcast and share this resource with your fellow officers. The goal of Critical Aspects is to serve, support, and sustain the law enforcement professionals. So head over to www.criticalaspects.org for more resources and information. And as always, God bless and be safe.